Okay, so we're going to create a sword today, and largely we're going to do the modeling in this installment, and then I'll make some shorter videos that have how we might apply colors through materials and some lighting backdrop, maybe do a little animation and play with the lighting. But this video is largely just going to focus on the construction of the sword. So we're in Blender 2.8, and we're going to go ahead and delete the default cube here, and we're going to use a cylinder, but we want to modify the cylinder. So I'm going to go up and click Add, Mesh, and Cylinder. But as soon as I get the cylinder out here, we want to go down to this little pop-up tab here and change the vertices to 6. So I'm just going to use the keyboard to enter 6. And so you can see here that we've got a 6 vertices cylinder. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 vertices. Okay, it's a bit tall, so we need to shrink it down a little bit, and that's in the Z-axis. So we're going to use S and Z and just scale it down so it's a bit thinner. Here we're making the cross guard, I guess you would call it, the bar that goes across the top of the handle. The blade comes out of. It's a bit wide in the X direction. The red axis is the X direction. And so we're going to go ahead and scale in the X direction and thin that up a little bit. And it needs to be a little bit longer in the Y direction. So we're going to hit S to scale, constrain that with the Y. And I'm going to stretch it out a little bit. All right, so there's our crossbar. And we're going to be using a lot of edit mode. So if you hit tab, you can go into edit mode. You can also go to edit mode, switch back and forth between object and edit mode right here. We do want to go into the face. You can either manually select the face. Remember, this is the vertex, this is the edge, and this is the face select. You also can use not on your numpad key, but your actual numbers in the top left of your keyboard. If you hit 1, 2, 3, you can select those. So we use 3, we're going to select just the top, and I'm going to go ahead and inset that a little bit. So I'm going to hit I to inset and just move the cursor a little bit in, and you can see that that face scaling inward evenly. And I want to give it a little more geometry, so I'm going to hit E to extrude and lift it up just a little bit. And then I'm going to hit I to scale it, to inset just a little bit, the I to inset the surface just a little bit. Now this is too big or too wide along the red axis for a blade. That would be a pretty thick blade. So we're going to go ahead and scale that. So we're going to use S and X, and we're going to just thin it out a bit, so that looks like that's a little bit more blade-like. So we're gonna zoom out here. We're gonna go ahead and click this, and we're going to hit E to extrude, and we're just going to go ahead and lift that up a ways. And okay, so let's scroll back here and see what we've got so far. All right, looks like we need that sword to, I'm gonna go ahead and Control Z, and I think I would like to shrink that down a little bit more in the Y axis. There we go. Okay, so now I think I'm ready to extrude. I'm going to use the middle mouse key and while holding down, move the mouse to rotate, and then I'm going to zoom out with the middle mouse key so I can get some perspective. Hit E. All right, and grow my sword here. That looks like a good length. Now I'm going to stop here because I want to continue a little further, but then be able to collapse the vertices at the end into a point. But if I was to collapse this into a point, then I would end up with lines that run up through here. And I don't want to alter this. I want this to be rectangular. So I'm going to hit E again, come up a little bit more, and I want my point to kind of come from here to here. and from here to here. So I've got that rectangular blade. So I'm gonna zoom in a little bit, alter my perspective. Okay, so here again, if I hit vertex manually, or I can hit the 1 key, that'll select these vertices that are around here. And this is a part where you have to watch very carefully, because I'm going to right click here. I'm going to go down in my vertex. This is the vertex context menu. There's lots of options. We haven't learned about all these options, but one of the ones that we're going to use is merge vertices. There's a shortcut, Alt-M, and then we get to select. We can collapse them at center, at cursor, or a general collapse. We can collapse them by distance. We just want to collapse at the center, and notice they all fall into one at the geometric center, and that gives us a nice point on our sword. Okay, so now we sort of have the top of the sword mostly complete, and we need to work on the handle. So I'm going to zoom in towards the handle, hold down on my mouse, middle mouse key, and kind of tilt the sword back so that we're looking directly underneath. I want to make sure I'm in edit mode. I want to go back into face mode, so I can manually select this or hit 3 on my keyboard and come down and select this face. So I want to do a few things. First off, I want to hit I to inset and scrunch it down a little bit. And then I'm going to hit E to get a little bit of, oops, I rotated E in order to get a little bit of geometry. All right, I'm going to come back up here. Oh, that's too much geometry. I don't want that much geometry. So I'm going to Control Z that, hit E, bring it down again, right about here. I want to bevel it, and I can bevel by using this bevel tool over here in the edit menu, or hit Control B. I'm going to go with Control B here and do a little beveling. All right, and I want to make this into a handle. I think it needs to be a little bit wider and a little bit more narrow. So I'm going to scale along the X, widen it out a little bit. I'm going to scale along the Y in order to scrunch it down here a little bit. All right, that's probably pretty good for a handle. So now I can hit E and extrude that down. And it looks very handle-like. If I scroll back and get a sense of proportion, that looks about right. I need a pommel here. Typically, this keeps people that are using a sword from their hand slipping forward and being cut on the blade itself. And then if we have a pommel, which is a slightly oversized end to the hilt or the handle, it's going to keep the sword from sliding out of their hand the other way so that they drop it. So if I go back and look at the surface here, one of the things that we can do, it's similar to the 3-stack box tutorial that we did, but if we hit E to extrude and then S, we can actually expand it out just a little bit and click on it, right? Left click, and that's going to give us an enlarged face. And then when we hit E to extrude, we could bring that down and form kind of a nice pommel there. And then we could do some things at the end here. One of the things we could do is we could Control B and then bevel a little bit. And then I like it kind of coming to a little bit of a point. So I'm going to click the face, hit E to extrude down a little bit. That might seem extreme, but I'm going to use the same method we did on the tip of the sword. I'm going to go up here and select vertex mode, or hit 1 on my keyboard. Come down here, right click like we did before onto merge vertices. This is in the vertex context menu, and click at center, and then it's going to form kind of a point, so it sort of looks a little bit like a gemstone down there. All right, in the pommel, and then we've got the pommel here. It's kind of decorative. We've got a crossguard here, our blade here. All right, we're pretty much done with the modeling of the sword, and we can go back into making it apply some materials in order to give it more of a look. I'm going to put like a gemstone right here on the crossguard, so we're gonna pretty it up a little bit. I'm going to go back into object mode and choose add. You can also hit Shift A in order to get the add menu, and I'm looking for an icosphere, and it already kind of looks like a gem. Now it's too large, and so I'm going to make some modifications here. I'm going to scale it down. I'm going to hit G to move it along the x-axis to bring it out. It looks like it's still a bit large. So at this point, I think I'm going to move my 3D cursor because it's kind of in the way. So to move your 3D cursor, you just move your mouse over to where you want it, hold down Shift and hit right click on your mouse, and it'll move that over. So I'm going to come back here, select this, and hit S, scale it down a little bit more, GX to bring it out a little bit. All right, so that looks pretty good. While it's still highlighted like this, I'm going to hit Shift D, GX, and I duplicated it with Shift D, and I'm going to kind of bring it over onto the other side so we have some symmetry here. So it looks pretty good. I think it's a little further out on this side than on the other side, and so I'm going to GX, push it back in just a little bit. That looks about the same. All right, so we've got one there, we've got one here. Okay, I think that's going to wrap it up for the modeling. We've got a pretty good sword on our hands here, and we're going to get in and do some materials and lighting and some other aspects next. But hopefully with this tutorial, it'll help you get a sword modeled. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next tutorial.